Labour is pushing the government to implement a new law that would strengthen the legal rights of victims of crime.
Yes, the proposed law would replace the current Victims Code and give people more insight into their cases, as well as new protections. Shadow Minister for Domestic Violence and Safeguarding, Jess Phillips, joins us now. Very good morning to you. Is the issue here, Jess Phillips, that victims are just not considered properly in the legal system?
Well, certainly if you speak to victims, that is what they will tell you. They will tell you that they feel like nobody gets in touch with them, that they're not kept abreast of all of the developments in their case. Certainly if a case goes to court, which of course many don't, but when it does go to court, often victims are kept out of conversations about plea bargains. And then again, the number is dwindling at every point that I say this, but then if their perpetrator is sent to prison, actually being kept informed of issues like parole is still a massive problem, and lots of victims I speak to feel that nobody is listening to them.
What would you change then?
I mean, I would change many things, and what the Labour Party is proposing in the Victims Law, which actually is a bill that's already been put before Parliament, is a duty to keep victims informed throughout, and a legal right for victims from the moment that they come forward, whether that's in a hospital after a violent incident or in a police station where they might be coming forward. I'd also want to see specialisms in certain sorts of victims. So, for example, stating that every police force area should have to have a specialist sexual violence and abuse service, what we call a RASO, rape and serious sexual violence, assault unit. So all of those things need to be enshrined into primary legislation, because currently the code is a bit weak.
Tell us, Jess Phillips, what you think and what Labour's position is on what on earth is going wrong in our schools. We now know there are around 10,000 reports of sexual harassment and abuse posted on this website. Everyone's invited. And this phrase of rape culture in some of our top schools, and now it seems to have spread to state schools as well, is appalling for anyone connected with the education system. What's gone wrong and what can be done to fix it?
What has gone wrong, I'm afraid to say, is a state that simply has not taken seriously, and a government that has not taken seriously this issue for too long. So women's voices, we've been hearing for weeks, and no doubt we will hear again for months, and in fact it's been going on for years, that people coming forward about their sexual violence are ignored. The criminal justice system largely fails them. But in this regard, I have to say, I'm not at all shocked about what has happened in the last couple of weeks around schools, because 4 years ago, this was uncovered. It was uncovered by the Women in Equality Select Committee and taken to the current schools minister and the then Secretary of State for Education, that there was not just rape culture, there was rape occurring. Every school day in a year, there would be a rape that was going on in school. A third of 16 to 18-year-olds stated that they had experienced unwanted touching, so sexual assault at school. And 2/3 of 13 to 21-year-olds said that they'd suffered harassment at school. This was 4 years ago, and the government did absolutely nothing to change that. And
there's different issues here, aren't there? If there is sexual assault and rape, those are crimes. Those should be reported to the police. I mean, why hasn't that been happening?
Well, the reason that people don't report to the police is because, I'm afraid to say, under this government, we have seen a massive and dwindling amount of charges and convictions. People don't believe that they're going to be believed. And also, do you know how traumatising it would be? Imagine you're a 13-year-old girl and you've just been raped at in the toilets of your school, and you go and you tell a teacher, and nothing is done by the school, and then you're expected to go back into the classroom and sit next to that pupil. Now, that I have handled numerous cases like that. The only thing the government has done about this in the past 4 years, when they've known full well what was going on, the only thing they've done was to put in place new guidance for teachers, which they have not tried to make sure that teachers know about. And the only reason they did that was because a kid who was raped took the then education secretary to court. That's the lengths that people have to go to be believed. The government have been failing young people in schools. They are failing rape victims in our country, and they have got to do something about this now and stop just acting shocked and upset.
Jess, the Simon Bailey, who leads the National Police Chiefs Council on Child Protection, said that parents who become aware that their sons particularly have committed a sexual act or sexual assault should contact the police themselves. He also pointed towards the sheer volume of pornographic material that's being consumed as to driving some of these assaults. As Susanna said, 10,000 accounts of assault, sexual abuse and rape on this website now. What do you make of what he's suggesting, that parents have to take some sort of responsibility if they find out that their son has committed an act like this, potentially, or daughter as well in some circumstances? And equally, the advent of pornographic material being available on the internet and so accessible to young people?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for the latter point, the pornographic point, we've got to put in place age verifications and systems. Although never foolproof against teenagers, no doubt, there's got to be something done about the wide and aggressive pornography that is available. And we've got to be talking to young people in schools about it. You know, on the point about sons, I've got a 16-year-old son and a 12-year-old son, and I will send them both off to school today. And the reality is that we are never going to tackle this as a society unless we as individuals understand that we don't just know victims of this crime, we probably also know perpetrators of this crime, and we've got to be there pointing out and talking to our sons. You know, since this all has been happening this time, and I've done it numerous times in the past 5 years, I've spoken to my sons about the kind of things that they see at school, the kind of things that I wouldn't accept of them, the kind of things that they should be doing. But the reality is this is happening in our schools, institutions. The government has a safeguarding responsibility for the nation's children. I'll take responsibility for my own children every day of the week, but for the nation's children, the government have got to be doing more, and that is why we've called for this inquiry. And I'm not just going to accept Gavin Williamson being shocked and appalled. Why doesn't he actually do something? Let's hear what he's going to do.
Well, and just on that, because you've laid blame at the feet of the government, but it is obviously schools' responsibility. I mean, you've identified one particular case, shocking case of a 13-year-old. It's clearly a huge responsibility of the schools in that case. But where does, you know, is it parents? Is it schools? Is it government? What fixes this appalling culture that seems to have developed?
Well, all of them get to fix it. So the government guidance that was released, which was only released after an inquiry and a rape victim threatening to sue the Secretary of State. So after all of that, that guidance was put in place, because before, in the guidance to schools, there was one paragraph about what to do if sexual harassment or assault occurred in your school, peer on peer, so young person to young person. So one paragraph existed until 4 years ago. Now, that guidance has been improved. However, 2 years ago, it was found that schools didn't know that the guidance has improved, and only 20% of teachers had been trained on this new guidance. So the government were doing nothing about it. So myself and another backbench MP implored all members of parliament to write off to all their schools and ask teachers to learn this new guidance and to put on training. Now, that's not my responsibility as a backbench MP. That is the responsibility for the Department for Education, who, as best I can tell, have done absolutely nothing about this rather than rewrite the guidance because they were forced to. So they have a responsibility to schools without question. Okay. Schools, of course, have a responsibility to manage this well, to get trained, to understand it and to know the guidelines. But often they're left, as we've seen, for example, in the rollout of healthy relationship education, when they are trying to do the right thing and talking about healthy relationships, domestic violence, LGBT relationships, they're left high and dry by a Department for Education who won't wade in when parents are attacking them for talking about
Yep.
government say.
It's a delicate balance, but it's a vital responsibility. We have to leave it there. Jess Phillips, thanks very much indeed.